Thank you so much for joining us. That is Yilungelo Lakho. It's Your Right. We're broadcasting live right here on SABC 1 in our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg. Studio, and that is 011 714 6918 or 6919. Our email address is consumer@sabc.co.za. And of course, if you're on social media, you can reach us on our Facebook page, and that is @Yilungelo Lakho, or rather tweet me directly, and that is @SpeechNzawumbi, and don't forget to hashtag Yilungelo Lakho. South Africa, good afternoon. Now, South Africa's road accident compensation system, administered by the Road Accident Fund, is touted as ranking among the best in the world. But the people whom it was designed to benefit do not necessarily agree with such a claim. Historical differences between the Road Accident Fund and some members of the legal profession over the settlement of victim claims are well known, particularly to the claimants who are at the receiving end of the system's bureaucracy. Have a look at this insert.
Lo seyingumbono uthande ukuxhaphaza kwimigaqo yeli. Ingozi ezimasikizi nezihambisa imizimba yaye zishiye izihlobo nezalamane zixhwalekile. I-Road Traffic Management Corporation ithi zingaphesha kwewaka ingozi ezisube imiphefumlo kulo Disemba simshiyayo. Into ethi ilandele ingxikela izicelo zenhlawulo ezithi zifakwe kwi-Road Accident Fund. Wonke ubani uselungelweni lokufaka isicelo xa ethe walixhoba lengozi eyehle emgaqweni wesithuthi. Ngoncedo lwamagqwetha amaxhoba athi asifake emva koko alinde. Umlindo lo wentombi ezilishumi uJanet Dramotsidisi uwazi kakuhle ukuba unjani. Intombi yakhe yafumana ukonzakala entloko emva kwengozi yemoto ngo-2011. Nto eyamshiya engumlwelwe ingakwazi nokuzenzela nto. uJanet wafaka isicelo enethemba lokuba inhlawulo iza kukhawuleza kude kube ngoku usalindile.
Iyang affecta kakhulu because umntwana firstly akakhoni nokuya kuma physios because ama physios i-medical aid ayabhataleli, and Road Accident Fund baye bangithembisa ukuthi ngizothola ne-undertaking certificate but yizobhadala ama physios, akana wheelchair and nama ngisebenzi angikhona afford ukumthengela zonke lezo zinto lezo, so yang affecta.
Uthi umntwana wakhe ufuna unakekelo lwengcaphephe zokulula amalungu omzimba. Oku ke kufuna imali. Ixhala lakhe into yokuba ukulibaziseka kokuphuma kwemali esuka kwi-RAF kungenza imeko yomntwana wakhe ibembi kakhulu.
Makaphuma esibhedlela ne bo-doctor baye bangipromise ukuthi since asasemntwana asasemncane i-possibility ukuthi angahamba ikhona as long as angathola i-physio. So manje i-understand ukuthi i-delay because akayitholi naleyo physio. So angagcina mhlawumbe seka-stiff, thola ukuthi sekulate ukuthi angahamba futhi.
Noxa umba wakhe sewugqityiwe enkundleni uselithuba ukuba abone imali ifika esandleni.
When her case is settled, she's going to now wait longer than ever before for payment. If it used to be 6 or 8 weeks, although sometimes it was 3 weeks, it's probably 4 or 5 months right now. So that is a much longer wait after you've already waited 4 years.
uDibroglio uthi unobangela luxambuliswano phakathi kwamagqwetha kunye nabameli be-RAF.
And it's a tragedy, especially, for example, in a loss of support case where the widow has no money, that you have to see the fund go to court for 1.5 years to dispute the merits, another 1.5 years to work out how much to pay the person, and by that time they can't pay school fees, they've given up even the television, they've given up everything. And now they get told your case is settled, and we settled in October last year, but we've got a cash flow issue, please can you wait a bit longer.
Apha eminyakeni i-RAF ikhe yahlangabezana neengxaki ekukho kuzo ukunyuka kwendleko zokulawula eliziko, ubuqhetseba bamagqwetha nemali engonelanga yokubhatala izicelo zentlawulo. Izinto zothuse umzi xa i-RAF isithi ayinamali yokuhlawula amaxhoba. Eliziko lifumana isabelo kwimali ethi ihlawulwe ngabathengi bamafutha ezithuthi, kodwa le mali incinci kakhulu. Zingekosonjululwa izingxaki, imeko efana nale kaJanet iza kuba sisonga semihla ngemihla. Kuvuyisile Mdoda, Yilungelo Lakho, eGauteng.
And now to further our discussion on the position many road accident victims often find themselves in after lodging a claim with the Road Accident Fund, let's extend a warm welcome to Ronald Barbroff, a personal injury lawyer, and of course, he's also Senior Director on Ronald Balbrough and Partners. Ronald, thank you so much for joining us. Let me just inform you viewers that who had also invited Road Accident Fund, who was central to today's discussion, but unfortunately, they informed us at the last moment that they were not able to participate in our discussion today. But despite that, we'll continue. The discussion always continues.
Yes, yes. Hi, thank you very much.
Ronald, thank you so much for joining us. Now, perhaps we need to start from the beginning.
Yes.
Why was there a need for Road Accident Fund?
It's a very important question. You know, when the use of the car became so popular and prevalent in the United Kingdom way back in the 40s, there were two problems that had to be addressed. The first was that frequently victims would sue the wrongdoer, and the wrongdoer had no assets. So you were suing basically what we lawyers call a man of straw. So you got a judgment, but you couldn't get compensation. On the other hand, for a momentary act of negligence, perhaps you sneezed, and you went through the traffic light at that stage, and you knocked someone down and caused them to suffer terrible damages, you could lose everything that you had, because you'd have to pay the damages for a seriously injured victim. So government in the United Kingdom said, look, we have to introduce compulsory third-party insurance. So a law was passed which required every motorist to take out insurance for his or her car, which would protect both the victim that was injured as a result of an accident arising out of the negligent driving of the vehicle, as also the motorist himself, if he or she got sued for the damages caused to the victim. And that's much the system we have today. It exists throughout the developed world with slight variations. So that's why it's necessary. It's a compulsory system, and it used to be funded, and in many parts of the world is still funded by motorists buying insurance from private insurance companies. In South Africa, our system is run by the Road Accident Fund, which is a state body, and we have a very good system of funding, probably the best in the world, and as far as I know, it's only applied in Chile, in South America, and that is there's via a fuel levy. So no one can actually get out of buying or paying for insurance, for buying third-party insurance. And for every litre of fuel that a person buys, and remember, it's included in the price of products. And the loaf of bread that you buy, the bottle of cooling that you buy, the bottle is made from plastic, which is made from oil.
So there's an amount that goes to
everyone
the fund.
is paying towards the fuel levy, and that is what's used to fund the Road Accident Fund. That's the pool of money which is used to compensate victims. And it's a very good system because no one can get out of it. In other words, you know, in the past, if you didn't buy insurance, well, you take your chances and... yeah, so it's a good system. The funding model is excellent.
All right, let's get into the operation side of it. So how does it work? Being the victim, being involved in an accident, how does it work exactly in terms of claiming? We'll get into who can claim and how they can claim. But how does it work in terms of giving the money to
well, there's certain formalities that have to be complied with in terms of the Road Accident Fund Act. And that is there's a prescribed claim form, particular form that's got to be completed, and that form has got a part for a medical report to be completed by the doctor that first treated the patient, the victim for the injury, or the superintendent of the hospital at which he or she was admitted. And you've got to fill in information, it's the registration numbers of the cars. It's quite a detailed form. And that form's got to be lodged with the Road Accident Fund within 3 years of the date of the accident occurring, where the vehicle which caused the accident is identified. So if it's an unidentified vehicle, the so-called hit and run, you've got to lodge the claim within 2 years. Okay, so one needs to be aware of that. Now, the time periods, 2 and 3 years respectively, obviously do not impact on someone who's a minor. So if a child is injured, someone under 18 years of age, time doesn't run until 18 years is reached, and then the normal periods still run. Or for a person under disability, so because of the injury, you're in a coma and in a mental institution or whatever. But generally speaking, it's 3 years and 2 years, and one needs to be aware of that because very often victims, for whatever reason, don't claim, particularly those persons who live far away from urban settlements, and they don't know they can claim, and very often they wake up, it's too late, and the claim has lapsed, it has prescribed.
So who exactly can claim?
Any person who sustains injury as a result of the negligent driving of a motor vehicle. And it doesn't matter where it happens. It can be on private property, it can be on, obviously, on state roads, etc. So the cardinal elements are that an injury has been sustained or a death has occurred as a result of the negligent driving of a motor vehicle. So I want to emphasize there's got to be a wrongdoer. There's got to be someone who's negligent before you can claim.
One would assume that by virtue of being injured,
you can't
then
just,
there was negligence.
if you are the author, if you are responsible for the injury yourself, if you get drunk and you drive into a tree and you're injured, well, you're not entitled to compensation because it's your own fault.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of negligence, it has to be the person who is either the driver if you are the passenger, or it's either the person who came head-on collision that will hit you.
So it would essentially be one of two drivers. If you're a passenger in a vehicle, it could be your driver, if it's a single vehicle, and let's assume there's no other vehicle involved. If there are two vehicles involved, it could be either your driver or the driver of the other vehicle, or both. And shortly, when we come to the show, I'd just like to dwell and explain the position of a passenger, which has dramatically improved because of a challenge which was brought by the profession to the Constitutional Court against a very unfair provision of the Road Accident Fund, which limited passengers' claims.
So there were different claims for a passenger and the
Exactly,
driver.
exactly.
All right, and that changed when?
I think it was 2013, more or less then. Yeah.
Okay. You said that it doesn't matter where the accident actually happens.
Exactly.
And anyone can claim. So in a case where there is a deceased,
Yes.
let's say there was a breadwinner
Yes.
who was basically responsible for the whole family, and that person dies, is declared dead on the scene. Who can claim then on behalf of that person? Is
Yes.
it the
Well,
beneficiaries? How do you determine
Absolutely.
the
Well,
beneficiaries?
there are two elements which are required. Firstly, that the deceased was legally obliged to support those who are left behind. That's the first thing. Secondly, was able to support them. And thirdly, that those who are left behind are entitled, or were entitled in law, to be supported by the deceased during his or her lifetime.
By
So-
entitled, what do you mean? Do you mean that they have to be minors?
No, not
to prove
necessarily.
that?
Look, generally speaking, obviously, young children, children under the age of 18, if a breadwinner is killed and that breadwinner was supporting those children, they're entitled to claim for loss of support, as would a widow be. But you have a borderline situation where, say, the children might be in their 20s.
Yeah.
The question is, well, okay, is there entitlement? And then one looks at the family situation. If the situation was such that the intellectual ability of the children was such that there was no reason why they could not go on to study at university, and that was the family's intention, you could then claim up to age 23, 24, 25, so that the children could then complete their tertiary education. So
And the fees, will they still be the
well,
same?
that would be part, not so much the fees, the ability to support, because obviously you can't claim more for loss of support than what the deceased in his or her lifetime was earning and was able to contribute towards the support of the spouse, that's the widow who's left behind, or the widow as the case may be, or the children who are left behind. So it all depends on the facts.
All right. I still want us to take it from the point where I suffer an injury from the accident zone. What to do? What do I need to do?
Okay, well, the first thing you need to do is to make inquiries from friends, family, medical practitioners, people that you trust and can rely on to refer you to an attorney that they know does this kind of work, specializes in this kind of work, and has achieved good results. The attorney's profession has for some time permitted advertising. And, there's a saying, self-praise is no praise. And it's generally better to make inquiries within the community as to attorneys who have achieved good results, who are well known and well regarded, rather than rely on adverts, because adverts is self-praise. I'm not saying that attorneys who advertise are not good. It's far better to get word of mouth referral.
All right, Ron, let's give the viewer more details after the break. Maske sithi xa ke mbukeli kuloo ndawo sibele evenkileni sidibane emva kwale venkile sikhumbuzeke nawe ukuba ubufuna ukuthi abantu xaxaba kule ngxoxo yethu namhlanje sisale kunqaba phaa ku-011 714 6918 or 6919. Ingaba ke wena ukhe walixhoba kwingozi yemoto okanye unesalwane esikhe salixhoba kwingozi yemoto, sazise ngokuba kwenzeke ntoni? Did you claim? Were your claims successful or not? Tell us on 011 714 6918 or 6919. We'll be back shortly. Sikamkela kwakhona ke bawethu namhlanje siphethe umba we-road accident fund. Imibuzo ke ungazibuzwa yena yokuba ingaba ngobani abathumela ii-claims, ingaba ke wonke umntu olimele endleleni uyachamla na kule nyweba, nokuba ii-claims zithatha ixesha elingakanani. Send me all your tweets right there at speech and Zawumbi, and then you can hashtag Yilungelo Lakho. And of course, right there on our Facebook platform, you can also send us your Facebook messages. And please don't write on the wall, just go on comment on the status that we've uploaded for you so that we're able to read your messages right here in studio. Ron, before the break, you were still giving us information as to, from the point where I suffered an injury in the accident zone, what do I need to look out for? What do I need to make sure that I have in terms of documentation when I submit the claim?
Well, first I want to say that I thought I could speak fast. You put me in the shade. Absolutely.
All right.
Well, okay, first thing is obviously to get an attorney. Now, the victim may be unconscious, the victim may be hospitalised.
Lovely.
In that kind of situation, the families need to make inquiries because there's no substitute for early investigation.
Okay.
What we say, lock up the facts, get the investigator out to see how did the accident happen, are there witnesses, was it due to a defect in the road, was there a pothole? Because you often find out 2 years down the line where you think it was exclusively the fault of the other driver, but he or she had to swear because there was 2 potholes and they had no choice. So step one is get
Would that be regarded as negligence though?
Well, not necessarily, because, if it's a situation of sudden emergency and I'm driving at the correct speed, minding my own business, keeping a proper lookout, and all of a sudden, whoa, the car had to be just go, and I see there's a pothole, and I swerve, instinctively, and I collide with another vehicle. Well, am I negligent? Probably not. And you don't want to find that out 2 days before trial, 4 years after the accident. You want to find that out like pretty soon after the accident.
So who can tell you if you're negligent? Is it the police?
Attorney. Attorneys that specialise in this kind of work will usually have an investigator.
Okay.
And the investigator will contact the police, will go to the scene of the accident, will take photographs of the road, will basically find out as soon as possible what happened in this accident, who was to blame, and basically button it up for you. And that's really, really important. Okay, step one. Step two, your attorney will get the medical report from the hospital that treated you. He or she will obtain a police report, which will give the details of the vehicles involved, the contact details of the drivers, and whatever you need to know. And also, interestingly enough, the report makes provision to indicate whether or not either the drivers were under the influence of alcohol. And there's blocks that the police can actually fill out.
So that means that will come from the police? That's the report
from the police. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
In a case where everybody is deceased, let's say it was a taxi accident, everybody dies on the spot, then what happens in that case? How do you determine if the driver was negligent, if the driver was under the influence and so forth?
Good question. Never had one like that. Hope I don't, but yeah, okay. Well, one looks at the facts. Accidents don't just happen. They're normally caused by speeding, failure to observe the rules of the road, bad road conditions, intoxication and the like.
Yeah.
So your investigator, by and large, would be able to do a reconstruction report, indicate what probably happened. And I want to emphasize our law works on the issue of probable. So you don't have to prove beyond reasonable doubt, as is the case in a criminal matter, that it was so-and-so's fault. As long as you can show 51%, it was probably the fault of this person. And in the tragic example that you gave, it's my view that the passengers would have a cast-iron claim because they can't be to blame. The driver's deceased, and if they can remember what happened, they may say, well, he was going a bit too fast, and we said, hey, slow down, etc. So they would have a claim because as a passenger, you're in the fortunate position that you only have to show 1% negligence. Okay, because you're passive, you're sitting, you're minding your own business, you are not connected to the driving of that vehicle. So it's far easier to succeed in a claim as a passenger than as a pedestrian, where you could have run across the road, failed to keep a proper lookout, or a driver. So in that example, it's my view that all the passengers would have a claim.
So what is the frame time, the time framework after the accident?
Well,
is there a time that
as indicated, 3 years with the vehicles identified, 2 years with the vehicles not identified. Prescription, the time doesn't run if the person is a minor under the age of 18. But it's always a good idea, get to your attorney quickly, get the facts locked up, obtain all the information, lodge the claim as soon as possible so that you haven't got this danger of prescription. Because it's a great tragedy when people who sustain injury or where there's a death of a breadwinner, for whatever reason, they just don't deal with it. And by the time they get around to dealing with it, it's weeks or months before the deadline.
Later, or years later.
Or especially if it's in a remote area. And the attorney's based, for example, say in Johannesburg, and it happened out far away, and the records are not great at the police station in question or the hospital. So get an attorney. Also, what I want to say, and obviously I'm now wearing my hat as a lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay. The Road Accident Fund have embarked on an initiative that they have offices at most state hospitals. In fact, what they do is they are given details of patients in those hospitals who've sustained injury in road accidents. And those patients are then contacted by employees of the fund and told, look, you don't have to go to an attorney, which is true. Claim directly from us, the Road Accident Fund. Our heart is bleeding. We want to compensate you as much as possible, and we have your interests at heart. Now, with respect, ask yourself the question, can the man who shoots you be interested in giving you as much compensation as you're entitled to?
Of course not.
Can the insurer, and the Road Accident Fund, with the best will in the world, is in fact an insurer, how can it act both as the party that's going to pay you and depose what you are claiming, and then act as your attorney? It's like one person acting as prosecutor in a criminal and defense attorney. You can't. There's a conflict. There's an impossible conflict. And if we had time, I could take you through so many examples of tragedy which has happened to victims who have fallen for that. I don't want to use the wrong word, perhaps ploy, trick, I don't know if it's the right word. They've actually fallen into the arms of the Road Accident Fund, who've neglected their claims and given them peanuts when the claims are worth millions.
Okay, with regards to time, let's talk about the finalization of your claim. How long can I wait if I lodge a claim in January this year? What's the waiting period? How can I know if my funds were successful or if there's going to be a bit of hindrances
Very important
when it comes to my claim?
I'm glad you've asked it. I think viewers need to understand that if injuries of any consequence have been sustained, if it's more than a bump or a bruise or a scratch, if you've broken bones, if there's been a head injury, if there's been a brain injury, if there's been something of consequence, it takes a long time before it heals sufficiently that the medical experts that your attorney will use is able to say what the prospects are going to be over your lifetime. Are you going to need further operations? Will you be able to cope in the workplace? Will you manage your work? And what further medical expenses will you require? So your attorney is actually doing you a favour by not rushing the matter to settlement. Okay, if it's a small claim, and you know it's really worth very little, and most of those claims no longer exist because of changes to the law from 2008. It does take time, and the Road Accident Fund, unfortunately, does not devote itself to assessing the claims as it should do, because what it's supposed to do, from the day you lodge your claim, there's a period of 120 days that you can't sue the Road Accident Fund. And they're supposed to use that period to investigate your claim, to see, was the other driver to blame, what are your injuries and how much should your compensation be? And in our experience, they seldom use that opportunity. Although, let me say, in fairness, because there's no one here to speak for the fund, where the injuries are fairly serious, it's not possible for the Road Accident Fund, or in fact for the claimant's attorney, to know within such a short time after the accident what the claim is really worth. So, time frame, minimum 3 years for any sort of
minimum
series.
3 years.
Minimum. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's Ronald Barbara, who's joining us right here in studio to give you all the information you need about your road accident claims. I'll also be taking some of your messages you're sending me right there on Twitter, on Facebook and on Twitter. So better make sure that your message is also there. But right now, let's quickly go for another commercial break. We'll be back shortly. Well, welcome back. Before we continue with our discussion, let me just remind you that we're also waiting for your telephonic participation right in studio. So the number to call is 011 714 6918 or 6919. And of course, I said that you should send your messages. And right now, I'm going to look at some of the messages you've sent us on Facebook. I've got Uspagazim Choko, who says, my brother had an accident when he was 8. He is now 18, and my mother was told she could not claim until his medical bills amounted to a certain amount, but that was impossible because he was in a state hospital. Can he go claim now because he still has a problem with his leg due to the accident? And then we've got Mashenge Messi, who says, my dad was injured at Bushen, ebhasini walimala umlenze waclaima, but abamnikanga nto. Must we go, or what must we do? Must he do, rather? And then we've got Lorraine Nontlantla Sebeko says, my son was involved in a car accident in 2011. When I claim for Road Accident Fund, they tell me about the law, got 2008, that as long as he's not crippled, he can still walk and run, he won't get it. And he was injured very badly because he lost some of his thumbs, or some of his thumb bones. And then we've got Nomzamo Mompele, who says, my sister lost her husband in 2011 in a head-on collision leaving behind 3 minors. But the Road Accident Fund said they can't pay because he was 100% at fault. Isn't there any other way they could help? Ron, what happens in those cases? I think we should start with Nomzamo's case.
Okay, Spitch, if I could just look at it while we deal with it, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, right. Well, firstly, it's absolute nonsense. When you're injured, you're entitled to claim. The fact that the child is 8, to be told you have to wait till their medical bills is nonsense. The claim should have been lodged.
The claim should have been lodged.
Absolutely.
I think we should hear from Kagiso first before continuing these messages, responding to these messages. I've got Kagiso who's calling us from Mpumalanga. Kagiso?
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
Ulevo lwakho ma?
Like an accident in the 2013, going 25 June.
Try to speak. Yes, Mama. Try to speak up kancane nje.
Okay, it's an accident in Mloto, 26 July 2013. So, the first had available CT expected, but in Malawi, it can't.
What happens, is it?
But they said I didn't get hurt, so I should go home, like, I should contact the doctor and I should go to the next clinic.
Okay, I think we have a problem with Kagisho. We're still going to try and fix her line. We've got Lindile on the line. Lindile from the Eastern Cape. Hello, Lindile.
Hi.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Fine, thanks. And
Good, thank you, Putwam. Konembuzo. Lindile, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Baba, ufuna ukuthini tata?
Umama mtata wafumana ingozi. Nge-26 April 2008 wayoclaima immediately. And then uyazihambela ezinto zakhe, but beke waya naseGovern Beke PE.
Zintoni into zakhe tata?
ezinto zokulandela iclaim yakhe kuba
Okay.
waye waclaima that.
All right.
And then kuthiwa into yakhe sekuprocess but hey ingathi kudala tata asiyazi basingenza kanjani.
So what claim money in go 2008 immediately after the accident?
With that.
All right. But Linda, Kaukutlale, Bugale TV, Ron will try to answer your question there. Actually, we have a couple of people who have that problem. Well, Linda on the line says that his mother suffered an injury due to an accident in 2008. She claimed immediately after the accident, and up to date, there hasn't been any kind of compensation from Road Accident Fund. She followed up the case, though.
Could he share with us, was it via an attorney or directly with the fund?
Is Linda on the line? I think Linda dropped the line, but he just needs, okay, what's the difference? Let's just get to that. Why is it important to check whether it's through an attorney or you do it directly to Road Accident Fund? What's the difference?
Well, obviously, if you instruct an attorney, the attorney is obliged to give regular reports to the client.
Okay.
And the client can be in contact with the attorney and find out, well, how's my claim going? You know, has the claim been lodged? If the Road Accident Fund have not
Are there
made an offer.
disadvantages or advantages of doing it?
Well, I'm an attorney, there are no disadvantages.
Okay, no disadvantage. All right.
But seriously, would you do your own appendectomy? Would you take out your own appendix? There's a reason why attorneys do these claims. You have to study for 6 years. You have to serve internship for another 2 years. Then you have to write, I think it's about 12 examinations before you get admitted to practice as an attorney. So it's a really complicated area of the law. Personal injury claims are very complicated, and you need to go to an attorney. It's money well spent. It comes out of the claim anyhow. You don't go to the Road Accident Fund directly, because unless you've got very, very minor injuries, you will not receive the compensation that you're entitled to.
All right. Let's get to some of those messages, especially Nomzamos and Lorraine's. Lorraine says, her son was involved in a car accident, lost some of his thumb bones and whatnot, but then still, they said he cannot be compensated for as long as he's not crippled.
That's a very important question. You see, government changed the law with effect 1st of August 2008. And what it did, in my opinion, very unfairly, it took away compensation from huge numbers of road accident victims. So unless you sustain really serious injury, and by really
what is regarded as serious injury?
Well,
because to me, if my hands cannot operate efficiently, then that's a serious injury.
Well, let me shock you, and let me shock the viewers. In terms of the law as it now stands, if a victim breaks both arms, both legs, loses a toe or two, loses a finger, the hearing's a bit impaired, has some bad scars, in terms of the law as it now stands, that is not regarded as a serious injury.
So that's a minor injury.
It's not serious enough to give you compensation for pain and suffering. You can still recover your actual medical expenses. You can recover and be paid in respect of medical expenses you require for the rest of your life. But you will not get compensation for what you can imagine with those kind of injuries will be horrendous suffering. Serious injury is limited to a very complicated formula in terms of what is called the American Medical Association tables. Something imported from a foreign country into South Africa, totally inapplicable to the circumstances of our country, our socio-economic circumstances and the circumstances in which our people live. And unless you are assessed at being 30% whole person impaired, you don't generate compensation. Very unfair.
Wow, very unfair and very interesting also. I get was shining the spotlight on the issues around road accident funds. Please send us all your comments right on our Facebook page, and of course call us in studio on 01171469186919. We'll be back shortly after this. I guess I'm going to go to our studio on Road Accident Fund on how to claim, who is entitled to claim, and well, on the line right now we've got Lungiswa calling us from Cape Town. Lungiswa, hello. Hello, Lungiswa.
Hello.
Hi, Siswam. Good.
I'm good, and how are you? This is Lutando.
It's Notando. Okay, sorry about that.
Lutando from Eastern Cape here.
Hi, Lutando.
I'm good, thanks, and how are you?
Good, thank you.
Yes, I have a question. My sister died in an accident in 2005, June 2005, and the claim was lodged the very same year. But now what the attorney is telling us, we went to the attorney even this week, is that my sister was a domestic worker. She was earning about 500 rands on her last job just before she got into an accident. Yes. And she was fired in that job because she was a domestic worker. But she previously worked, And then what the lawyer has told us is that my sister was earning only 500 rands, and then my mother now is earning foster care for the fourth child because she left behind 4 children. And now they said that the road accident fund cannot pay, hence she was only earning 500 rand in a previous job, and by the time she died, she was not working. But my question is that how is road accident fund know that she was not going to get another job after that in order to raise the children?
Thando, I think Ron wants to talk to you.
Absolutely. You're entirely correct. The fact that your sister was earning 500 rand a month, well, that's fine. That's 6,000 rand a year, and she would use that to support her children. And the fact that she was unemployed immediately before the accident doesn't mean she wouldn't get another job. And in fact, a much better job. If a person's unemployed for a short period, even if you've been unemployed for a long period, that doesn't mean that you would not work again. And of course, one looks at promotion prospects. We now have minimum wages. 2005, I'm not sure what the minimum wage was. I think it was certainly more than 500 rand a month.
So what can she do in a case?
Well, I think she must go back to the attorney and find out, did the attorney serve summons? Was summons served on the Road Accident Fund within 5 years of the date of the accident? Because that's important, so that the claim is still alive. And then she should say to the attorney that, if she likes, you heard it on the show, that there is a claim, and the attorney must investigate what the prospects were of the deceased earning more, and not accept the fund say so. Well, we're not going to pay simply because she didn't work the month or two before the accident. There's a claim. There's 6,000 rand a month in the kitty. The law normally assumes that the earner would consume half of that.
Lutando, are you still on the line? Yes, you're still there. Did you hear Ron? Okay, so I think we've got Buyiswa. I think Lutando just dropped us. Right now, we've got Buyiswa calling us from the Eastern Cape also. Hello, Buyiswa.
Hello, Putin.
Hello, Mama.
Hello, Putin.
Mama, siyakuva. Luthini uluvo?
Putin, cela uqonda ndafumana kwaxhayisana imoto edisuka kuphuma empilweni ziphunza. So into enzekayo ndenzakala apha emehlweni ne. So la moto owner la moto ndibuyisela back esibhedlele pha. So inesi ladibana nayo pha yathi akekho ugqirha. So yandinikeza amayeza. Mama ndahamba so elamehlo ngokunengxaki libane lilila libabomvu ezihamba neqala lenhloko so ngicela ubuxolo bangathini ke ngoku sorry claims zami.
All right. Thank you so much, Buyiswa. Well, Buyiswa basically is saying that she had an accident in East London or in the Eastern Cape somewhere, but then she was taken to the hospital immediately. When she got to the hospital, I assume it was a public hospital, the doctor, there was no doctor to attend to her case, but then she was given medication. Years later, that very same eye, I think it's got a condition, either, I don't know whether it's itching or she can't see, I don't know the exact condition of the eye, but that's basically the case. Can she claim, is she entitled to claim? She's not entirely blind, but she is suffering as a result of that accident.
Well, the first problem, time. You've got to claim within 3 years. So if you're not a minor, if you're not under 18, you have to claim within 3 years of the date of the accident.
If you're not under 18?
If you're not under 18, you've got 3 years to claim where the car is identified that caused the accident. If it's hit and run, you've got 2 years. So 6 years down the line, the claim wasn't lodged. I'm afraid the claim has died.
So there's nothing she can do. Let's go back to Lutando. I remember that Lutando said his sister was earning 500 rands before she suffered an accident. Up to date, I don't know whether they haven't received any kind of... Well, actually, the lawyer, the attorney themselves, we still need to get to that, Ron. That when the attorney says there's nothing that you can get from Road Accident Fund because you're earning less than 1,000 or you're earning 500 rands.
Well, you're entitled to go to another attorney. I think firstly you need to ask, she needs to say to her attorney, please send me a letter setting out why you say what you say. So it's on record. That will make the attorney a little more cautious in simply dismissing the claim. And if she gets that letter, what she should do, she should approach another attorney, make inquiries within the community and go to another attorney. And that attorney will look at the letter and if necessary will call to see the first attorney's file and advise her whether the advice she's been given the first time round is correct. On what I've heard, there is a claim.
All right. Let's quickly look at Mbuyazi, who sent us a message right there on Facebook. He says, my cousin died in a road accident. It was a result of a truck that blocked the road near Felixton, and the driver on the car was my brother, who was driving drunk, and we're told that we're not eligible to claim. The accident happened back in 2010. What shall we do? We tried everything possible. Is that person entitled to claim?
Well, firstly, the fact that a driver is drunk doesn't necessarily mean that the driver is responsible for the accident. Because you can
but in terms of proving negligence, then how is it going to go?
No, you can be under influence of alcohol, but still driving at a correct speed, keeping a proper lookout, and suddenly there's a truck in the road ahead of you. Now, obviously, it's not a good thing to drive drunk, and one must condemn it outright, but it might not necessarily be the cause of the accident. We don't have the circumstances. It might have been coming around a corner, where even if the driver was stone sober, he could not have seen that vehicle, the truck across the road. Maybe it was at night. Perhaps there were no reflectors. So one's got to investigate the claim properly. Having said all of that, we ask the question, well, why was the truck blocking the road? And there may be a claim against the driver and or owner of the truck. Bottom line is, as I said at the start of the show, you have to go to an attorney. The attorney has to investigate the claim properly, because even though there may not be a claim against the road accident fund, there may be a claim in this case against the owner driver of the truck, or it might be there was a defect in the road which caused the truck to have the accident, and you could sue the roads authority. So bottom line is...
Let's come to the injuries in terms of claiming. We have a lot of people who are calling in, and some say that, well, at the time of their accident, I didn't suffer minor injuries as a result. But then years later, then I started having developments, complications around the area of the injury.
Exactly.
Then are you entitled to claim? Shouldn't you have a doctor's report? Then can you go to the doctor and say, well, as a result of what happened in 2007, this is my condition right now?
You have to claim within 3 years or 2 years. So my advice is, if you've sustained injury in a road accident, and I'm not talking about a scratch or a bump or a bruise that gets better in a week or two, but if you've sustained an injury of consequence, especially if you've been hospitalized overnight for more than one night, go to an attorney, lodge a claim, have that attorney serve summons out of the court to make it an official claim within the 5 years of the date of the accident. And then you can wait and see. You don't have to finalize the claim. If the condition doesn't get worse over a reasonable period of time, you can then settle a claim for whatever your attorney thinks it's worth. Alternatively, you can then go forward and develop the claim if your condition has now worsened. Especially, and I want to emphasize this, especially with regard to young children who suffer a brain injury, because very often it gets much worse over time.
Much worse over time. Well, thank you so much, Ron. Well, we'll hold it there for now. We'll be back shortly. Remember that we're taking your calls right there on 011 714 6918 or 6919. And of course, your messages right there on Facebook. I can see the messages are popping and the calls are coming. So just make sure that your call is also amongst those calls we'll be taking after this break. We'll be back shortly. All right, remember that your participation line is 011 714 6918 or 6919. And let me remind you that this is just the participation line for our discussion right here in studio. In order for you to get all the details you need for e-claims zakho nengcombolo sitheve, this is the number you need to call, the one that's on your screen. That is 0800 005919. I will repeat the number. It's 0800 005919. And of course, you can send your emails to customer services at ref.co.za. So it's customer services at ref.co.za. And please send all your queries there if you have something that you'd like to inquire about from Road Accident Fund. But right now, we've got Tolagele who's calling us from Johannesburg. Hello, Tolagele.
Hello, Njani?
Sikhona mama kunjani?
Ngiyaphila baba, nami ngomunye engathola ingozi yemoto 2012 December ne. So ukuthola ingozi yemoto ngaya esibhedlela ngaphuma.
Yes.
After esibhedlela nga report ukuthi nginepain esiswini. Bangitshela ukuthi ngibuye January ngoba bodoctor bekho abazongisheka lo bhekuthe yani. After ngaziyela nje mina sengizele clinic kwathiwa ukuthi ngaphakathi ngadabuka ukuthi lahlala ne-dashboard yemoto yabo imoto zachayisana ngadabuka ngaphakathi amathumba akangasahlala indawo aphumela ngaphandle. So leyo nto leyo iyangisafarisa, angikhoni ngisho nokuyithola, angikhoni ukwenzani, ingenze njani ngoba unceda ngilithole.
This is Tolagele. I think it's a case similar to the one we were speaking about. It's after the incident injuries. She wasn't in an accident. She felt a bit of a pain in the tummy, but later on, when she went to the doctors, I think years later, they discovered that her intestines were damaged as a result of the compression she suffered on the accident. Can she claim? Can she not claim?
Well, especially as I said, you've got 3 years and 2 years, and when in doubt, you must claim. Claim, and if your injuries are not severe and you are concerned...
But what happens at the time if I just feel a minor headache? And then 2 years down the line, I'm told that I almost suffered brain damage. Then 3 years down, after the period.
I'm afraid it's just too late. The law is
the law. It's just too late.
The laws, and it's the same. Whether someone shoots you, whether someone assaults you, whether someone's dog bites you, you've got to claim within 3 years, unless you're a minor under the age of 18. So my message is, if you've sustained an injury which you think is significant, or even if you're not sure, rather lodge a claim.
So the minute I have an accident, I suffer, even if it's a minor injury, even if it's just a prick on my tummy, on my thumb, I should go to the doctor, get a report, and claim.
Well, I wouldn't want to encourage frivolous claims when there's no substance to a claim, because we don't want to swamp the road accident fund. But if there's been an injury which is a painful injury, which is a worrying injury, certainly you must see the doctor. Certainly the doctor must tell you whether he or she thinks there's going to be long-term consequences. And if there are, you should lodge a claim. You know, rather lodge a claim and wait and see.
If there are going to be complications.
Because if there are going to be
process.
complications, you're going to know within 3 years. So, yeah, that's the safest way to go.
Let's hear what people on Facebook are saying. We've got John Bukhoba, who says, my sister died in a car accident in 1984. She was still young and did not have an ID. We never claimed because our mother didn't know anything. I found her death certificate now. Can you still lodge a claim? I think Ron just answered that question, that unfortunately, if it's been over 3 years, there's nothing that they can do. And then we've got Mbele Kakabazela. I was involved in a car accident, or is it a car tank explosion, rather, at work. In 2010, April, and hospitalized for almost 5 months. The flame went through my throat, and could not breathe until I had to do an operation in my neck. So now I have been trying to claim, but some people who work there, I think we need to get that message just full on the screen. But so long, let's just try to answer that when, well, we did answer that. It's so unfair, though.
Well,
don't you think the system is unfair?
Well, hang on, that appears to refer to a workplace accident from a tank.
But let's start with that one. The person who died in 1984,
well, okay.
definitely, I mean.
Well, look, you know, in fairness, whether it's a road accident fund or whether it's an insurer or whether it's you and I who've caused someone else harm, you can't be liable forever. The law must bring certainty. So the 3-year period within which you can claim is not an unfair period.
It's not an unfair. Okay, I think we've got the messages right back on the screen. So Mbele says now I have been trying to claim, but some people who work at the Department of Labour say that they don't think that I would get paid, as the doctor's final report says that I'm fine. But I have scars in my body. My question is, how possible is it that I wouldn't be compensated? Still a similar case to that one you had earlier on.
Good question. And this demonstrates the unfairness of workmen's compensation legislation. And in fact, there are proposals to change the road accident fund scheme, which will make it even more unfair than workmen's compensation, because with workmen's compensation, you can never sue your employer. You can't sue your employer. So let's assume the employer was negligent, made that work expose him or herself to dangerous conditions, and that accident occurred and the injury was sustained. You can't sue your employer.
But what if it happened? Maybe it was a case of negligence in the workplace, and then
who is supposed to be held at fault? It's a complete prohibition against suing your employer. All you've got is a claim against the Workmen's Compensation Commissioner, and it's basically a handout, please pay me something. And unfortunately, the administration of the Workmen's Compensation Scheme, it's now called COIDA, Commissioner for Occupational and Industrial Diseases. It's chaotic, claims are not being handled, it's a problem. And unfortunately, there are proposals to change the Road Accident Fund scheme to make it even worse than workmen's compensation. That's called Road Accident Benefit Scheme. Yeah,
well, definitely there's a bit of unfairness. A lot of people say that, you know, the time period that's allocated for this, it's so unfair. You know, it doesn't serve the victims or the people who are supposed to claim. Let's talk about, you mentioned early on that there's something new that might possibly replace Road Accident Fund. Let's quickly talk about that.
Well, government are pushing vigorously what's called the Road Accident Benefit Scheme. And they are trying to sell it on the basis that, look, it's good because you don't have to prove fault. Anyone who sustains an injury on the road is automatically going to get compensation. Of course, what they don't say is the compensation that the victims are going to get will be very low, will not be payable in a lump sum. So every month the victim's got to find their way to the Road Accident Fund's offices, like a pension. They can stop that payment at any stage. All benefits terminate when the victim reaches 65 years of age. There's no right to private health care. All compensation for pain and suffering, no matter how bad the victim's injured. Paraplegics, quadriplegics, amputees, major brain victims, no compensation for pain and suffering. And you cannot sue the wrongdoer for the balance of your damages. It's basically worse than workman's compensation, because workman's compensation, as bad as it is when it worked, paid the victim a lump sum, so he or she could get on with their lives. Road Accident Benefit Scheme keeps the victim forever dependent on the whims of some bureaucratic clerk in some office somewhere. Very unfair.
Wow. Well, Ron, thank you so much for joining us in our discussion today. And hopefully you right there at home, you got all the information that you needed. But if you don't have the information, or perhaps you still have some queries that you'd like to forward to Road Accident Fund, please make sure that you use the number that we put on the screen, and that is 0800 005919. Ake mawethu ke sasifikele esipheni senkqubo yethu namhlanje sithemba ke ba ufumene zonke ingqombolo ubufuna wena ukuzifumana kule nkqubo yethu. The topic we had today. Remember to catch our repeats every Monday at 12 p.m. right here on SABC1. Ake kucala lam nandi kusipionza ungi. Till next time, God bless and be good.